Salam and welcome to Ahlulbayt TV. This is a series of 5 shows focused on equipping the youth of today with tools we need to thrive in today's society. This show has been brought to you by Islamic Youth, which is an online platform created by the youth and for the youth, to provide the youth with resources needed to face challenges they may face. My name is Khadija, I'm 16 years old, and I will be your co-host alongside
Alaha, and we have put together this series as part of our leadership program at Hayden Islamic School. As part of our program, we sent out a survey to Shia youth around the UK, and with this, we have determined that mental health is one of the most pressing issues that they face. Given that this is such an important issue, we have seen multiple shows and events discussing it. However, we have specially constructed ours to be one from the youth to the youth. We have therefore put together our own key questions to ask our lovely guest, Fahima.
We are very excited and honoured to have with us today Fahima Mohamed. Fahima Mohamed is a qualified life coach and certified NLP practitioner, also certified in mindfulness, positive psychology, group and facilitation for companies and institutes, relationships and couples coaching, certified mental health and wellness practitioner. Firstly, thank you for driving down to our madrasa. What made you agree to come on today's show?
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for having me. Because I think that, the youth today really have an issue and a struggle and a challenge with regards to their emotional and mental well-being. And it needs to be addressed so that you have a better understanding of the world around you. So I'm actually also doing my master's right now in psychology and neuroscience of mental health so that I can actually, bring more of the studies to the community in order for everyone to have a better understanding of their well-being so there's more balance.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Our first question for you is, what is mental health?
Well, before I go into the actual definition of mental health, I think it's important that we understand the history behind it. For centuries, it's been around and it's quite complex and multifaceted. So, for example, I'm going to go through certain centuries where mental health was understood differently. So basically in the ancient societies, it was basically looked upon as demonic. And it was like especially in Greece and in Egypt and in Rome, it was looked upon as like a supernatural force when people felt and thought in a way that they deemed not normal, right? And then in the Middle Ages, it was also known as a treatment of including exorcism. And then we come to the 19th and 20th century where there was development in science, medicine, and therapies and treatment as we have today. And that sort of defined mental health differently. But overall, your question about mental health, what does it actually mean? It actually is just the psychological and emotional well-being that encompasses a range of factors within how we feel about ourselves, how we relate to others, how we see the world, and how we feel. And also how we decide on making choices and our responses. Because even if we feel in a particular way, each one will respond differently. And that response will actually indicate your actual mental state. And there's many factors that influence your mental state, right? So then a good mental state, for example, is characterized by a sense of happiness, fulfillment, well-being, when you're feeling sort of satisfied. And when we're doing research in science and articles, there is this thing about the quality of life. So if you feel your quality of life is in a particular way where you are able to manage and you have a really good well-being, then that also is sometimes a diagnosis state. So when you are talking about anxiety, depression, and sadness and stress, now that can be deemed as something as mental health. Because if you feel it after a long period of time, then that actually shows that you are not in that sort of category of feeling, I don't like to use the word normal, but there's like a scale, okay? There's like a spectrum that we should be feeling for a long period of time so that we can actually feel that we are in a stage of normal balance, right? There's, in the brain, there's this sort of, it's called homeostasis, right? And that is to show that we have to have balance. So too much of happiness and too much of sadness is actually not balanced for the brain. And that's where I'm going to come on to even a bit of neuroscience, because a lot of us think of mental health as just psychology. But neuroscience is really important to understand your well-being. And that will come on to understanding that there are chemicals, neurotransmitters in the brain that can be imbalanced to cause you behaving differently, for you to have different emotions to different responses to different things, which will sort of like, if we were to study a group of children or a group of adults to respond and react in a particular way. Now we have MFRI scans or PET scans to show the reaction in the brain. And if it shows up in a particular way that is not in line with everybody else, then that will also show the imbalance of certain chemicals and reactions. So even though it's cognitive, it's also biological, it's also genetics, it's a lot of factors. And what influences that is not just the fact that you are born in a particular way. Sometimes your environment, your experiences can bring about mental health. So you may not have been born with certain trauma, but you can create that trauma, when you are actually experiencing things in life. That's why when you are developing from 0 to 7, for example, your mental state is going through a process, and whatever you experience will be relayed as an adult, and it will show up in your relationships, in your interactions. So mental health is a huge, huge topic with regards to understanding its definition. It cannot just be said in one word. And there's so many different factors that do actually make a difference to understanding what it is. And for each individual, it will differ. For each range, for each stage, for each developmental stage as well. And even when you are born in the tummy of your mother, at the end of the day, when you are developing, depending on her mental state, will also affect the baby's mental state. So all of these things make a huge difference. But yeah, mental health is something that we are now focusing on a lot more. But I think that when we talk about mental health generally, we need to understand that it is not just one definition. It does not fit us all, and we all see it differently.
Thank you for that insight on how mental health is portrayed through olden times and how it's progressed. As you mentioned, that mental health is like the imbalances in your brain. Do you feel like having these imbalances means for Muslim youth, is your faith not strong?
Absolutely not, because there are sort of levels of faith that you can use to actually help with balancing your thoughts. And it depends on what type of mental health issue you are facing generally. Certain things may not be changed. For example, dementia. Those are things that cannot be, or Parkinson's disease, for example. These are sort of progressive neurodevelopmental issues. But something like, for example, like I mentioned before, like stress or addiction. So there could be cognitive methods, and there could be methods in faith, in Islam, for example, in order for you to have a certain belief. Because in CBT, it's more about having a certain belief, right? And you can incorporate some of your faith, like, for example, tawakkul, or trying to feel in a particular way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there for you and you're not by yourself when people feel loneliness, for example. So that can be incorporated into some of the treatments that you're having, whether it's therapy and your frame of mind. Because when you think about mental health, it's a combination of certain people understanding that it could be mindfulness-based therapy, it could be medication, it could be CBT, and these are the main sort of areas. So we don't know how each person is going to respond, right? So even if it is sort of like, saying that I have faith, I have, some sort of like belief, it's a practice, and if your brain can actually allow it, do you understand? So it's basically over time, it's a treatment. So you can't really say that someone who does not have faith will automatically have mental health issues. It does not work that way at all.
Yeah. As you mentioned, that our environment nowadays has a huge effect on our mental health. Mm-hmm. Do you think it also goes to the people you surround yourself with, alongside social media?
Absolutely. I think if you have a really great support system, if you have good positive friends, if you have habits around you in the ways in which you think, then that does make a real sort of like difference to the way in which you process things, the way in which you are with dealing with certain things. And we are influential, right? We are we adapt to our environment, we adapt, and especially at a young age, we are influenced by the 4 or 5 people that are around us. And we are habitual beings. So when we see things on a regular, and if it's the same thing, if it's good, it's going to be a good influence. If it's bad, it's another influence. But at the end of the day, also, if you understand in psychology, it's called the locus of control, meaning that are you the type of individual to actually be impacted by your environment, or you are outside of that thinking. So there's various sort of studies to understand how a particular individual will actually respond to the environment.
What advice would you give to the youth of today to help them enhance their mental health?
I think routine and good habits is so important. Sleep is so vital for your brain. It actually cleans the waste for the day when you're sleeping. And a lot of us, especially as youngsters, think that we don't need it. Good food, nutrition, exercise, and make sure that you have got good routine so that at the end of the day, you are actually healthy within your actual daily routine. When I coach clients, a lot of the times, they're all over the place and they cannot even get up to make their bed. And if you're not in a particular way of having some sort of discipline and sort of like routine which is going to serve you, then that can actually add on to the anxiety and stress. And when you have studies, when you have work and you're not organized and you're not punctual, so very simple things like that can make a huge difference to everyday beings. So even if you are, faced with challenges, but because you have your environment and your own self, done where you are ready for anything that's going to come to you because you are organized, you are, you're eating well, you slept well, you can handle it better. Your responses are going to be a lot better. So all of that makes a huge difference. And also having, good people around you, the role models, having meaning and purpose in your life, understanding why you are here, what you are doing, and that can make a huge difference as well. So it's the physical and the mental aspect of it to add on to the emotional side.
Thank you so much for that. But could you give us a little bit more definition on what you mean by purpose?
I think that's a great question, and that's really important actually, because that really does help with your mental state when you have meaning and purpose in life. And it also is in accordance with our Islamic belief, so that when we know the reason why we are here and certain things that we have to do, if you are in submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you will practice certain things, and that could help with your mental state. For example, having routine of salah and dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that is remembrance, and that also can help you, because there are lots of treatment, which is practice of mindfulness, for example, which is very, very, useful when it comes to sort of depression and anxiety and things like that. So that coincides. So when you know your meaning, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, brought you in this world as a gift, you somehow sometimes become more fulfilled in even having some sort of faith, not just in your Lord, but in yourself, that, there's a reason why I'm here. And it's kind of maybe jumpstarts you to actually want to do something, even if you're feeling so down, but you feel that little urge and that need to actually go further. And that's when faith can enhance your mental well-being. Not to say that if you have got mental health issues that your faith is lacking. Absolutely not, because we are struggling with regards to what's happening in our body, the way in which we think and believe, and we don't have complete control over it. And this can help us have control. And having that meaning just means that it sort of builds up that purpose to kind of move forward in life. And even take those steps for treatment, take those steps for certain things that you need to do to help you with your mental state.
Thank you for that insight on how religion is good if you surround yourself with it, and how its effect is on your mental health. So that concludes our show for today, and I hope that you took some knowledge and insight on how to treat yourself and your mental health. And thank you again to Sister Fahima for joining us and helping us gather more information on our mental health.
Please stay tuned for our future shows where we will be covering other pressures facing the youth today. Also, a final thank you, Ahlulbayt TV and Hayder Islamic School, for giving us this platform to help give a voice to the youth of today. Thank you and Assalamu alaikum.